expansive set of policies and priorities aimed at accelerating economic growth, creating jobs, and mobilizing large-scale investments in 2026. As Nigeria seeks to move to a new phase of expansion. Now, the government stated this in a strategy in 2026, that its strategy in 2026 will focus on strengthening stability, scaling output, and attracting long-term domestic and foreign capital as part of the contribution to ambition to place the economy on the path or towards the much talked about $1 trillion economy. That's by 2036. Now, a statement signed by the Minister of State for Finance, Dr. Doris Uzoka-Anite. She said President Bola Tinubu's administration was building on reforms implemented over the past 2 years, including exchange rate unification, energy market restructuring, and fiscal consolidation, and also to drive higher productivity. And also the deepening domestic value creation and expanding capital formation. According to the government, 2026 will mark a turning point in which policy emphasis will shift decisively from stabilization to growth, with a focus on lowering risk, unlocking private capital, and ensuring sustainable returns for investors while expanding opportunities for Nigeria. Well, let's continue this conversation. And my guest today is a special advisor to Mr. President on Economic Affairs, Office of the Vice President, Mr. Tope Fashua. He joins me live from our Abuja studios. Dr. Fashua, Happy New Year to you, and thank you so much for sparing time to join the program today.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tolu. Happy New Year to you, and thank you for the invite as well.
All right, then. I think we should start with an overview of Nigeria's economy as we wrapped up the year. We saw that inflation closed the year at about 14.45%, somewhere around where the president talked about earlier in the year. We also saw stability in the foreign exchange markets, foreign reserves growing and all of that. In your thoughts, many say that's like a springboard for us to move on in 2026. What do you make of that? What is your own overall outlook for the new year as we're already in January?
Right. Thank you very much. Indeed, we closed 2025, in a flurry, if you like, and a number of the indices were looking very, very, very good. As a springboard into the new year, you mentioned inflation, which decreased from 24.8% at the beginning of the year to 14.45%. That's basically a halving of inflation numbers. And with a view to going into about 12% this year, indeed, I predict that we'll be able to get to a single-digit inflation sometimes this year, maybe in the third quarter or thereabout, or even before. This is good for the economy. We also outstripped the projections on GDP growth. Many of the international bodies, IMF, World Bank, and even some of the local ones, their prediction was about 3.5%, 3.4%, some said 3.1%. We were able to clock 4.23% in the second quarter of last year and 3.98% by the third quarter of last year, with a view to closing at around 4% average growth for the entire year, which is good as well. Other numbers have been tumbling in. There's a balance of payment, numbers, which we were able to do about $19 billion this year, at least $19 billion. And also on trade surpluses, which also drives the balance of the capital account. On trade, we're going to be able to do as much as 23 trillion naira, as against 16.9 trillion naira in the previous year. A number of things are doing really, really well for us. We're doing well on agriculture. Food prices dropped consistently. Food inflation, as at November, was 11%. Even if there may be a spike in December because of the huge December spending, it's all for good. It's all part of the reflation of the economy. So whether you're talking about trade, whether you're talking about capital inflow in general, whether you're talking about inflation, whether you're talking about growth, all these numbers are positive, even though I've seen a few analyses that also predict, almost predictably, pun intended, that poverty was going to increase in Nigeria. I mean, I don't know where to pull out their magic from, but it seems that I'm challenging some of those bodies to try and start to think differently. You can't have all of these numbers lined up positively, and all you can do is cavalierly just say that poverty will increase in Nigeria. I mean, and there's this whole idea that they've been banding around about Nigeria being the poorest country in the world. That data doesn't triangulate, because the same country is the second largest player in cryptocurrency. We see instances where investment companies open in Nigeria. There's so many of them, and they're doing so much businesses. The financial sector, banking, fintechs are doing incredibly well, except we're talking about a redistribution of income issue, in which case that's where you have the new tax law, which some of the several people are also fighting, despite the fact that they know that the tax reforms are very pro-poor. Anyone earning 25 million and below should please check their pay slip. That's per annum. Check your pay slip by the end of January and see whether the government would not have put some money back in your pocket, even if it was 5,000 naira per month. And of course, as you go way down the line, for those earning 1 million and below, is actually zero taxation, especially where they have responsibility. If you are paying rent, for example, if you have children, for example, that means you are responsible. You claim all those reliefs and you don't pay anything to government. So this same country where, since MTN moved into this country, for example, in 2001 or 2002, they've been making the biggest profit from this country. That is how to triangulate data. If it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. But the point is that when you look at 1 or 2 or 3 other areas, then you then wonder whether this same country is what they say it is. And of course, given the reforms of the last 2.5 years or thereabout, we can see the numbers beginning to turn very positive. And that's very, very wonderful for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu as a reform-minded leader, and also doing the great things that many leaders in this country had avoided. So I look forward to the future with great hope.
Well, indeed, we see what is happening in the global space and what that might mean for the price of crude. And of course, we know that our budget largely will still get revenue from the sales of crude and all of. How worried are you with these geopolitical developments? How prepared is Nigeria in case the price of crude drops below expectations?
Right, of course, the price of crude in the budget has been set at 64.85, which is a bit conservative. The thing with the price of crude, if I may quote the Economist magazine, they once wrote, they said, predicting the price of crude oil is a game for fools, and that they had been caught playing the fool a number of times, because there's so many variables that lead to that may determine the price. Of course, there are boys playing in the market, in the futures market, in the forward market, and all of that. The guys delivering futures and what have you. They are a major determinant of where the price of crude oil goes. And of course, the geopolitical issues as well. I mean, we hear about the U.S. trying to seize some crude oil in Venezuela. That may have an impact. The good thing for Nigeria, though, must be said, that our brand of crude is a premium brand and controls about $3 to $5 above whatever you see on the Brent crude. That's fine. We're not relying on that. But back to the issue of the budget. It is true indeed that the only assumption we see on the left side of the budget is basically about crude oil, how much volume we want to sell per day, and that creates a lot of problems, all right, because we talk about how much volume we want to sell per day, how many dollars we want to sell that for. It creates an impression that the 1.8 million barrels per day, or as the case may be, or 2 million barrels per day, whatever they look, we put in that number, everything comes to Nigeria. No, it is not true. So it is not true that $1.8 million barrels will be sold every day, multiplied by $64, and boom, that money goes into the coffers of the government as if there are no expenses to be borne. But of course, the truth is also that almost all of our production, a lot of our production, the majority of our production is done by international oil companies, even though some local companies have now begun to chip in. But of course, the Nigerian government enters into joint venture agreements or production sharing contracts with these big companies, and our share, the last time the NAITI released that number, is about 40%. So, and it's out of that 40% that we then remove, you know, our expenses, whatever it is they spend in NNPC structure. And then that's when you can now say this is how much is coming to Nigeria. Therefore, the population of that left side of the balance sheet with of the budget with crude oil expectations is a little bit distortive. Because indeed, the key income of government comes from the federal inland revenue, even if the biggest chunk of foreign exchange comes from crude oil, okay? But the biggest income comes from federal inland revenue. The company income tax, the petroleum profit tax, and all the other revenues, capital gains tax, and all the other revenues that the federal inland revenue collects. And you can see why it's important for the Nigeria to recalibrate the tax laws, to be sure that we know what we're doing, to be able to widen the tax net, to be able to ensure that the large informal economy, and I've been positing that our informal economy is actually the largest informal economy by proportion to the size of the economy in the world. And there's reason for that, because Africa is the last frontier where some of the youngest countries in the world were running a system that was actually, is a global system which is imposed on us. We have to learn how to work it one way or the other. But so this is what we find. So we would actually be seeing, when we think about the budget, we should be thinking about where exactly the incomes are coming from. The about 32 trillion that is expected in revenue, most of that will come from internal revenue generation. Well, internal, of course, external revenue generation, and of course, but in terms of the proceeds of crude oil, it's kind of distortive, you know. So this actually begins to show a different kind of risk management perspective, because Nigeria actually does not rely solely on crude oil. No, we don't. And mind you, also that market itself is changing, because now a report, about one Argus report came out recently that actually acknowledged the fact that Nigeria has now become a sum of, you know, we're also exporting refined petroleum products, and sometimes also importing crude. We used to sell all our crude out, but now, at least sometimes, we see a scenario where we sell that locally to local refineries and then export refined products, which is great for us, and perhaps one of the reasons why the Naira is stabilizing. You mentioned Naira stability, and in fact, just yesterday, I saw that officially Naira was trading at 1,418, and the prediction is that in the course of this year, it may trade up to 1,350 or even 1,300, whereas we're not deliberately trying to strengthen the Naira, because we're now getting the gains of what they call the Marshall-Leonard conditions, by which you know, a lot of our exports are becoming more attractive as a result of the fact that our currency is a little bit cheaper. You know, and you can see that manufacturing goods export last year, you know, went up year on year about 67%. Which is great. This is also what's contributing to the capital accounts of Nigeria. So I see a lot of positivity. Of course, we keep an eye on crude oil prices wherever it may go. Equally, other commodity prices, because we're still large on commodity. If we were talking about cocoa, cashews, sesame. Just this morning, I was reading the news item. Cashew traders made $3 billion in cashew trade for last year. That's what they said themselves, the Cashew Traders Association. $3 billion. Just as about $2.6 billion came in for cocoa in 2024, and we're expecting that in 2025, because of some shortings in Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana, Nigeria actually moved into that space. We were able to increase cocoa production from 280,000 metric tons in 2023 into 350,000 metric tons in 2024, and in 2025, chances that we're going to cross the 400,000, because a lot of people have gone back to the farms. And in fact, I've seen a number of documentaries that show that a lot of our people, even in the villages, in the rural area, they don't have to make noise. Many of them are not on social media. They're buying new cars. They're improving their lives. They're rebuilding their houses from commodities. So it's those people who left, and many people are in the urban areas complaining about how Nigeria is bad for them. But you think back and look at what's going on in the rural areas. You don't have to run away from where you're from. So that's the kind of way I look at it.
Interesting stuff. Now, before I let go, two things. One is the misinformation and, of course, misunderstanding in some cases with regards to the tax laws. You are aware of this, what's happening on social media and everywhere, despite all the works by Mr. Taiwo Idele and, of course, members of that team. What more can be done to educate Nigerians to understand this? That's on one side. Then on the other side, the issue of interest rates. I'd like you to react to that. The central bank was not able to really reduce rates in the past year, and many are expecting that the first monetary policy meeting that should hold in February, there might be a shift. Do you think that would also happen, considering manufacturers and other players in the real sector?
Oh, yes. The central bank has committed to, almost committed, really, because they know the space in which they play. They're also working with a number of variables. But I think the last statement, in fact, the last central bank economic outlook that came out, you begin to see when you read through that central bank is looking at a scenario where in this year interest rates will begin to fall. Maybe not too rapidly, maybe cautiously. But that's as much as the central bank can do. Because, again, inflation has fallen for about 8 months consecutively. Even if there may be a little bit of reversal in December, I'm not predicting. But after that, what I've always told people, what goes up must come down. I talk about the comparator countries of Nigeria. Ghana inflation was at 50% about 2.5 years ago. Pakistan was at 45%. Pakistan's economy mirrors Nigeria's economy very uncannily, and vice versa. Today, Ghana is talking about 7%, 6% inflation. Pakistan is talking about 1-2% inflation, almost looking at deflation, which is even more dangerous than inflation. So whatever goes up must come down. We know exactly how our inflation ramped up to 34.8% in December 2024 before it started coming down. We knew the fact that there was sellers inflation. There were instances where there was skimflation. There was shrinkflation. People took advantage. People passed on the inflation and they passed on the cost to the people, and the people bore the brunt, especially with food. So many times we hear about the farmers are complaining and say, oh, food prices are going down, and they think it's all about from importation. No, it's not all about importation. Nigeria doesn't import cassava. We don't import gari into this country, but gari prices are falling by about 60%. But what that means is that more people are in that market. There was a production glut, and we need more of those. So we have to see, and I tell them that when food prices depress and food drives inflation and is down to 11%, perhaps a little bit lower, that drives down inflation as a whole. When inflation falls in a country, growth will increase for that country, and the standard of living will be better for the country. You mentioned the tax law. So in terms of inflation, in terms of interest rate, we expect that to taper in the course of this year, and which will be better for production, for manufacturers, for those who are borrowing. And of course, Mr. President is also very interested in driving the credit culture. You can see Uzoman Wagba in Credit Corp doing a great job, trying to push some of these things out. The student loan is also going on. More than 800,000 students have been impacted, even collecting stipends from government. When we were in school, when I was in school, I wasn't that lucky to get some of those kind of stipends. The world has changed, and Nigeria has changed with it. So in terms of the tax reform, it is already live, even though some people are still really ventilating, trying to see how they can reverse the cost. But the train has left the station. And since the train has left the station, we can only comply. So therefore, vigilance, eternal vigilance for those who are patriots in this country. Yes, it's down to patriotism. It's down to having a vision for this country, because we are actually arrayed against those who believe that the country is dead or the country should die. This country has only just begun under the leadership of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Now we're talking. Okay, so this, we have said again, we'll repeat, 90% of workers will benefit because 90% of workers earn below 25 million naira per annum and below, okay? So 90% of workers will benefit. There's no cause for NLC to start to ventilate, okay? Those who will be impacted are those who have been flying under the radar, moving billions and turning over billions everywhere. I mean, now you're systemizing it. There's no escape, really, because everything, the information is greeded. Either you're passing it through your company account or personal account, even if you're taking it to cryptocurrency, the government is there to say, you know what, pay your fair share. And I have also framed it to let people know that what has actually happened is that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has teed off what we've always wanted, the elite consensus in this country. We spoke about it for so long. Vice President Oshibajo spoke about elite consensus almost every time he spoke when he was in office. But now the thing is that who will tee off this elite consensus? Who will actually catalyze it? Who will set the ball rolling, understanding the fact that people will fight back because nobody wants to pay a little bit of extra? And I think that we've got to that point in this country where we must actually begin to think about collectively lifting up our country. Because, again, when we japa from this country or when we travel abroad for holidays and all that, we pay all of those things that are due to other countries. Our country also deserves, this country deserves to prosper. This country deserves, the people of this country deserve better infrastructure, better standards of living. And that's what the tax law is about. So we are very much prepared to actually counter some of the negative narratives that some people are fraudulently putting out. Yesterday, there was an instance, someone sent something to me, and people had actually created, you know, like they generate those fake alerts. And one guy showed that the federal government had debited him for 120,000 with the narration FGN tax reform. Oh my God. You know, and if not because they made a mistake, I was also confused. But in the numbers that they put there, they made a mistake. And I was say, oh, this is a fraud. I mean, look, so we're arrayed against criminals here. But this country must actually move forward.
Dr. Tokpe Fashua, I must thank you so much. Special Advisor to President on Economic Affairs, Office of the Vice President. Thank you so much for spending your Friday afternoon with us. We really appreciate this.
Thank you very much.
All right, then now still to come on the show will be